shot in scene episode 2, Eyes Wide Shut. Bill knew. Bill obviously knew that they were, passing off Helena. I mean, obviously, Bill and Alice both knew. But we know that Bill, is fully on board. He has to be, whatever the kind of leverage being, held against him is, and them is. We don't know that. I have my hypotheses, but the reason why we know that it's a full, comprehensive kind of understanding when they're in the toy store and they're walking through. We see people watching them, all kinds of people. So the whole store is pretty much set up with, these forces. And I don't think it's just one force. I think there's a couple forces. I think there's the Red Cloak kind of magician force, which includes the upper class participants, but then there's like a henchman kind of security force that's present in the toy store. So there's two groups working together, and they're choreographing not just Bill and Alice and Helena, but there's other kids being kind of ushered around. And when Helena lands at the Barbie, it makes me think, was there a communication prior? Because there's nothing spoken in the scene. They're just walking through the toy store. They're not coordinating themselves. They're not organizing. Okay, I think this is where the teddy bears are. Okay, I think this is where those two guys might be. They're just they're kind of being led around. They're kind of being led around a maze or kind of trajectory, and there's people throughout the store that are choreographing it. And I'll point to them in a different episode. In this episode, I just want to point to how Bill actually literally directs Helena to go with the men. Like, he points and he says, "Go. This is the moment we were talking about. It's time to go." Just like the Red Cloak man or figure tells him to go from the mansion. So he tells Helena to go. Red Cloak tells him to go. And there's this gesturing that happens, and Bill's hands throughout the film are telling. They're always they show up and they start behaving in ways that kind of tell on him and kind of reveal certain ways of knowing that he, as the protagonist, embodies. But getting back to the toy store, I think that when Helena finds the Barbie, that this is probably part of the instructions. They were probably instructed that, Helena was part of the instructions. Like, there was something communicated to her prior to coming to the toy store. It was a familial situation. We might even imagine, them being visited at the home by a group of people. Maybe it's just a few people or one person. And it's all being kind of laid out to them. And part of that includes instructions that, Helena, we need you to... Part of this is a game. You're going to go through the toy store until you find this Barbie. And when you find that Barbie, then you're going to be, made eligible for your next prize. I don't know. This is just a hypothesis, but it's a type of grooming that I can imagine. Because nothing's communicated in the toy store. They're just walking around, and we see people staring at them, men and women, transgender people. We see some henchman-looking people. I think that even Red Cloak and his two purple, sidekicks, his two purple henchmen, are actually in the toy store. I think some of the butlers from the mansion and possibly from Ziegler's place are also in the toy store. And I think there's other victims. I think there's other children that are being ushered around. You can just see a lot of kids are being kind of moved around. They got their heads down. They're not looking necessarily ecstatic or happy to be, running around a toy store. Maybe a couple of them do, but and there's some weird combinations of people, just like they don't necessarily look like they fit together. In multiple kind of reasonings, like age-wise, perhaps ethnicity-wise, class-wise, just the way that they're dressed. And there seems to be some people in here that are like super kind of like privileged, and they have, mink coats on, and they seem to be a part of the overall ecosystem in some way. It's hard to know. Who can know like who's buying and selling and trading here in this space? But there's definitely some choreography going on, and we can see this because as the Harfords are walking through without speaking, they're trying to just walk through the toy store, and Helena finally finds the Barbie, and so they know that, okay, here we are. And when she finds it, the only response that Alice offers is, "Hey," like it's almost like, "You found it, there it is." And then they turn the corner and go by the teddy bears, and when Helena comes again there, the only thing that is said to her is, "Hey." And so "hey" is the two things that are said to Helena before it's time to pass her off to the men. So that's just my hypothesis about the Barbie being part of the instructions and the kind of process for them to get to the point to pass off Helena. Because when she says, "Mommy, look," or "Look, Mommy," and Bill and Alice look up, they look terrified. They literally look like they're looking at a ghost. And there happens to be a bald man behind them that's just like staring right at Helena. And I suspect that bald man might be one of the butlers from earlier. But the point of this video is just to really show how Bill pulls his left hand out of his left pocket and directs Helena. He puts his right hand on Helena when she comes between them and heads towards the men. But Bill, very subtly, you can barely see it because it's hidden behind his jacket and it's away from us, but he pulls out his left hand and directs her to go. Again, just like Red Cloak told him to go. It's curious just to look at the way he looks at her and thinking like he's looking at her like almost like she did something wrong. It's hard to know like who's guilty here, like what happened. Why is Alice kind of chill in a way and chilly in a way, and why does Bill even look more terrified than her, yet he's kind of cold to Helena? And this goes back to my hypothesis that Helena isn't actually his biological daughter. And who knows, if there is a system of, cult-like, orgies, who knows who anybody's fathers or offspring are. But there's interesting ways that Bill uses his hands throughout the movie, and interesting ways that people are led around and led by another person by the hand. There's this kind of choreography going on. And what does that indicate about our society and our social systems? And as she's walking away, if you look closely, you'll see the bald man that's right in front of Helena reach his right hand back to grab her hand. So it's all coordinated. Helena's even looking at his hand as she's like turning to walk, and he's reaching his right hand back. But just before she grabs his hand, they cut. So the edits in this movie are obviously like perfect, and you have to like really slow it down and pause it to look at how these things are happening. But you can see the man sticking his hand out and Helena looking at it. And speaking of looking at hands, and when Bill pulls his left hand out of his jacket to tell Helena to go with the men, Alice is straight up staring at his hand, like she's looking down, like this motherfucker was telling her to go. After all he's done, he's the one that got us into this mess, So it's worth analyzing, and we could see it, as it goes forward and back, that he's actually pulling his left hand out of his pocket and saying go, and Alice looks at his hand like punk, and the child goes, and what Bill does with his right hand to Helena is just sussy. Like it's not even affirming. It's not loving. It barely touches her. He like kind of like stutters with it, you know, like he's not sure how to even touch her. Maybe Alice told him she doesn't want him touching her anymore. And speaking of choreography, lastly, and I'll explore this in another video. If you look at the Asian woman on the right with the mink coat on, she's choreographing somebody. She's saying go that way with her head. She gestures. So more to come on that. And like, subscribe, hype, share, all that. Comment below.